We're now calling the January 22nd board workshop to order.
Okay, I'm on. Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect. Hi. How's everyone? Good.
Trying to stay dry.
That's fine. So Corey was this is great. I just drove in from Edmonds actually. And so I got here and I sent Corey that packet that's in front of you. And now I can't find my own packet on my own computer. So, which is crazy. And he's sending it right back to me so that I can open it. And so I'm going to see if it's come in yet. Not yet. Not yet. Because I was going to put it up on the screen. Well, anyway, thank you everybody for having me part of your important planning session. I really appreciate it. There it is. Thanks, Corey.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Dr. Ladder.
Please call me Steve. I mean, you know that the doctorate and $6.50 will get you a latte. But I appreciate that very much.
Sounds good.
First, let me just say, I think you guys made a great decision with Corey. You've got a great, great team. And I think it's critical that you have a team that works together. And that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. Okay, there's that. Now, Corey, can I share? Yeah, I can share my screen. Okay. Oh. Pardon the technical wizard here. Okay. All right, can you see that? Corey, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hey, so I want to cover a couple things today with your valuable time. One, I want to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities, and I want to talk a little bit about the fact that the governance team needs to work together. It's a bit like a marriage. In the beginning, everything is wonderful and happy, and then you get down to living together and trying to work through the problems and the issues. And it's really about that commitment and that dedication to making things work when things go wrong. And by the way, things will go wrong. And the third piece that I want to talk about is optimism. I think the board sometimes will think that it's going to be easy to get a lot accomplished. And the truth of the matter is, the day-to-day operation of the district is a tremendous responsibility. Corey was working over the weekend, trying to deal with the snow and the ice and the water and all of the things that were going on. And yet he's got all these amazing, marvelous goals that have been given to him, and he's done a great job. I've looked at the report, but I think I want to just put a little bug in your ear about trying to remain cautiously optimistic and not overwork your superintendent in their first year. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for being part of the meeting. I see you're on there too. So anyway, so those are the three things. So let's talk about the first one, which is the performance objectives. And this is a critical piece for me. When we get down to, that's the agenda, but we don't have to worry too much about that. I want to talk about this. I hope everybody's had a chance to see this in the past. And if you haven't, and this is the first time, what you're looking at here is a picture. The picture has two forms, depending upon how you perceive it. Some people perceive this as an older woman, with this being her large nose, and this is her mouth, and that's her eye. Other people see this for the first time, and they see a beautiful young woman turned to the side. That's her eyelash and her nose, and that's her jaw. So it's really the same picture, but in that same picture, our perception of what we are seeing is different, and can be different depending on how you look at it. Because I can look at it one way and see the older woman, or I can look at it and see the younger woman. Hopefully everybody's had a chance. Can everybody see the two images in this picture?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So when we talk about objectives and outcomes, remember this picture, because we need to be clear what we're seeing and how things can turn out. By the way, Corey, we have two new board members. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. And Tucker is here and Miranda is running a little bit late.
Okay. Welcome, Tucker. Hey, my name is Steve Louder. I was a superintendent for more than 30 years. I retired in 2014. I live in Vancouver, Washington. I worked in 3 states. I worked in California, Idaho, and Oregon. And now, since 2014, I've been running superintendent searches, helping the districts and communities find the right fit. And one of the things we do as part of the package is we go through some of these things we'll talk about today. We call it phase 5, to ensure that people are clear about the perceptions, their roles and responsibilities, and the perceptions of what the goals are for the superintendent in that first year. And by the way, just like in a marriage, if the relationship is going to thrive, everybody has to be responsible for it to be successful. The role of the superintendent is setting the standard for ensuring the academic progress of the students, being active with the buildings and the partnerships, bringing the board in on all the partnerships, and they remain part of the process, so that they have ownership of what's going on. And based upon Corey's last report that I reviewed earlier, he seems to be doing a great job of keeping people up to date on what he's doing. The superintendent has to be a coalition builder with the big picture. They have to continually communicate that education is the background of the democracy and the society and the community. Be visible in the community. And with Corey, you already have a built-in visible leader, somebody who's been there for generations. The family, you've been there for generations, Corey, as I understand it. And you have always been there to roll up your sleeves and to get down to the work. You don't let other people do the work, you get involved in it. The board's role is to articulate the system goals, to be proactive in improving education in the community. You did select you're going to evaluate the superintendent, but did select the superintendent, which is the primary goal of the board. secondary only to setting the goals for the district and monitoring how things are going and progressing, and being a conduit for the community. You adopt operating principles and policies, and you serve the entire constituency, which means that your role, and this is a difficult one, that you don't just serve those people who come to you with concerns and complaints or agendas. You serve everyone, the entire community, all students, all members of the community, including those without children in the schools. I think this piece is maybe understated, but it's important. The relationship between the board and the superintendent should be one of mutual respect and confidence, which means that there should be no surprises from the superintendent to the board or the board to the superintendent. Don't come to a meeting and tell or ask Corey, well, hey, what about this? You know, or I heard this. Can you respond? You need to talk to him ahead of time. You need to give him the opportunity to hear what you're hearing or what you've heard, and to give you some feedback before it's discussed in public. And that's only fair because he needs to be able to have a chance to gather information, materials, or to look into a situation. Otherwise, you'll be getting a lot of, well, I didn't know about that, or I'll have to look into that and I'll get back to you. So it's not a place to open up the can of worms that may be out there. It's a place to share and discuss and to plan, but there should be that respect and no surprises on either side. And that means a lot of communication from both. Expectations are important. The board should expect the superintendent to execute the policies that are already adopted. That the superintendent should give all policies a chance to succeed. That the superintendent make, or rather refrain from making decisions, should be the board, but make decisions that follow the current adopted policies. The superintendent shouldn't be coming to the board all the time to ask what they should do. They are the leader. They are there to enact the policies and the philosophy that the board has set down. But there are decisions, and many of them, that need to be made at the board level. And that's a piece that you guys will have to work out together. Each board has their own level of need for what part of this decision process they're part of. But you've hired a superintendent to make those decisions, allow them to make those decisions. And by the way, they're going to make decisions that don't work out well, just like you would if you were the superintendent, and you would deserve respect and counsel and support and correction, possibly, if the decisions don't work out. Everybody has a right to be fully informed. That means that the superintendent has a right and a responsibility to keep the board informed. And this is the other thing that I was talking about, recommendations. The board has the right to not only have the superintendent make decisions, but to make sound, clear, concise recommendations based upon current policy and information, past practice, etc. So Corey comes to the board with an issue and a recommendation. The board may accept it, they may reject it, they may modify it, but you always come prepared and you always come with a sound, solid recommendation. The board has a right to expect the superintendent to share the hard work and the blame. A colleague of mine close to here was just released by his board. Why? Because he was carrying out the board's directives and the community got upset. And so guess who got fired? The superintendent got fired and got blamed for doing what he was told to do. So this is about sharing the success and sharing the things that aren't successful and working in this relationship to make everyone successful. It's about teamwork. It's about support. The superintendent needs to support the board, and the board needs to support the superintendent. You will always have differences of opinion. You will always think that the decision isn't quite the way you might have done it. one of the things that I used to say when I was superintendent of a district of 38,000, I would get a phone call from a parent. My child was suspended or whatever. It's not fair. What are you going to do about it? And the response was, well, if the principal acted within the scope of their responsibilities, nothing. If they have gone outside the scope of their responsibilities, then I will certainly look into it and we will take action. And the reason that I would say that is, even if I may not have suspended that student for that infraction, I don't have time or ability to adjudicate every decision that's made by the people who have been given the authority to make those decisions. When Corey makes a decision or enacts a policy in a way that people don't like, you need to be able to say, did he follow policy? Did he make a decision that I may not have made, but it is his right to make? Or is it, do we need to look at policy and adjust policy? So you need to give Corey support as your superintendent, and he will make decisions that will be popular and some that won't be. And as it appears from your report, Corey, you've already had to tell some people no, and it's been very difficult because nobody likes to hear no. And it sounds like you were able to do it and things are moving forward, which is one of the things superintendents have to do. The superintendent expects the board to establish and live by those policies. When things go badly and he's following those policies, don't change direction on him midstream. You need to, if in fact you believe the policy to be poorly conceived, then have a discussion about that and see where the majority of the board is going. But don't change the horse in the middle of the stream because things are getting bumpy. You need to be steadfast and move forward. The superintendent has the right to expect full support from the board as long as they're superintendent. And we've been talking about that as we've been going down this path. The superintendent needs your support. The community and the district need you to be a team. If there is a perception that you're not a leadership team, if there is a lot of controversy or backbiting amongst the board and the superintendent, that will spread into the community, into the district, and things will get very difficult. It'll be difficult to move forward and to get the work that you need to do done. You need to be a unit, a team, so that even though an individual board member may disagree with the majority of the board, that individual needs to say, I advocated for my position, the board did not agree, I support the decision of the board, and we're moving forward. Nothing worse than going out there and say, I disagreed and I need support and I need people to come and, lobby the board to get my position. That shouldn't be the way it works. And unfortunately, it does work that way in many districts, much to their discredit, I guess, is the best way to put it. When people come to you, not only personnel, when they come to you as a parent or a community member, please don't respond that you're going to fix it or that you will address it. Give them the advice. Listen politely, intently. Give them the respect they deserve to express their concerns, their feelings, but reserve your right to make a decision or express your position until you've heard all of the facts, all of the processes that you need to go through. When somebody comes to a board member and says, this is a bad action, this is a bad guideline, this is a bad curriculum, thank you for that. I appreciate your input. We will be discussing this at the next board meeting, but allow me to reserve my right to make my decision after I've heard and reviewed all of the facts. It's difficult at best because when people come to you, they expect your support because they voted for you. It's difficult to be able to tell them it's a process. I'm one vote. I will have my opinions, but in the end, the majority vote of the board will stand and I'll support that. It often comes to you that somebody's unhappy that they got transferred from 5th grade to 3rd grade, or that somebody was disciplined or somebody was released, and people are going to look for you to give them relief and to correct that action. Please don't give them the impression that things are going to be fixed. Go back to we'll listen to your concerns. You have the right to appeal this through the board policies. You have a right to appeal these decisions, and we reserve the right, or I reserve the right again, to make the final decision after I've heard all the facts. Protection is a key one, especially in these days. My friend that got released, he expected the board was going to support him because he was loyal and he was dedicated and he was doing what he was directed to do. His board did not protect him. When people come forward with undue or unwarranted demands or criticisms, or unfair criticisms, don't sit idly by. Support and defend your #1 employee. He deserves it. He expects it. And it's your responsibility as a member of the leadership team to support him. That doesn't mean you don't listen. That doesn't mean you don't empathize with the people who come. But in the end, and by the way, even if your superintendent was doing something that you strongly disagreed with, an open public forum is not the place to have that discussion. Support and defend, or say, we need to take a look at this policy or directive. Thank you for your time, and move forward. But don't allow people to go on and on, demeaning any of your staff members, by the way, not just your superintendent, unfairly or unjustly, even if it's in public. They have a right to their opinions, but only so much can be shared in public. Evaluation, and this is a key piece. Evaluations are not a point in time. They're not summative. You don't sit down at the end of the year and start writing up your feelings about what happened during the year, what was successful and what was not successful. You need to be having these discussions regularly, formally with a board as a group, and informally with Corey. When you have a concern about something, pick up the phone, send him an email, say we need to discuss. Do remember that all of your emails and your text messages to Corey about school business can and will become public. So be somewhat cautious about what you say when you send an email or a text. Best to have a face-to-face meeting to discuss things that you don't want out on the front page of the paper. You do need to have an honest, crucial conversation about things. If it's going to be a successful relationship and an effective leadership team, you need to have those conversations early and frequent, not at the end of the year when you can say, well, you didn't do anything that I expected. And that's kind of this picture, you know, Corey could see the picture one way and you could see the picture the other way. You all need to be having these discussions on a regular basis so that there's a clear understanding of how people feel, the consensus feeling of how things are going, either well or not. Timely, fair, honest evaluation. That was a lot at the moment. How about questions or comments or thoughts?
That's all sounds good. I mean, I think that makes sense to me at least.
Anyone else? Okay. I know that you've gone through some of these things, I think with Michelle, but it always is beneficial to talk about them frequently, I think, to be reminded of them. I recall us going to superintendent meetings, and there was a gentleman who was very old at the time, but he'd been around a long, long time. And every year he would have his session on ethics. And it was always a good refresher to hear that conversation every year. It's easy to forget not only ethics, but communication skills and responsibilities and roles. So I recall those fondly. Communication is key. We've been talking about communication this morning or actually this afternoon, and I appreciate your patience with me. With strong communication, trust and honesty will develop. Respect will be instilled in the relationship. Without respect, trust, and honesty, the leadership team can't function. And when you communicate clearly, the district looks good. The district appears to be strong. I'm not talking about always agreeing on everything that happens in a meeting. You don't want to seem that strings are being pulled behind the scenes, but a strong communication and then a consensus on a path forward, and then everyone agrees to get behind the consensus of the board. You can communicate clearly in your meetings, your feelings, your positions, but in the end, move forward and communicate that. Communicate that while this may not have been your position, but you will support and defend and promote the decision of the board. Remember, you're a team. You have one employee, and that's Corey. Effective superintendents lead by the things that Corey is doing. Envisioning ideals, setting personal goals, regularly assessing his achievements, the achievements of the district, not just him, but the work that he's doing. Corey, the one thing for you, one of the things for you, this job is so consuming. You're working Saturday, you probably were working Sunday, maybe not at the office, but at home. You need to maintain your physical and emotional wellness. It can be overwhelming. And while you're young, it can still take its toll on you and your family and your relationships. So you need to take time, take your vacations, get away, have your cell phone, but be able to take care of yourself physically and emotionally. I see in your goals that you have mentors and you are participating in professional growth activities. That's critical. The one thing about the superintendency, Corey, and you probably know this already, it's a pretty lonely position. You had friends when you were in the district that were close to you, but now that you can dismiss them or write them up, discipline them, things change. And it's difficult to be the superintendent and to remain in that same kind of friendship that you had prior to being the superintendent. Reach out to your other superintendents. They're all in the same boat. They all have the same feelings. They all have that same amount of disconnectedness. Make that circle the people that you can rely on, that you can call when things are going well and things are going badly, so you can share success and concerns, or maybe advice about what to do, or with their thoughts about what you could do to move forward. And if nothing else, you're calling them to check in on them to see how they're doing, because everybody needs that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Corey, yeah. After 30 plus years, I can tell you that it's a roller coaster. But well worth it. And congratulations and thank you for doing it. And by the way, thank you to the members of the board for doing this. It's such an important job, and you don't always get the accolades and congratulations that you deserve for the hard work you put in. the moral standards, ethical standards, I don't have any conflicts here or any concerns. I think Corey has all of those things built in, but that's always an important one as well. Equitable dealing. I don't get the impression that, Corey, you're going to have trouble with this, but it becomes rather difficult again because you've had friends in the district. And again, I recall my deputy superintendent in one of my districts became the superintendent after I left. And he had a friend who had been his friend for 25 years. The friend became the principal of a high school. He did some things that were not smart, and he got disciplined and suspended. It ended his relationship with that person. You have to make those decisions knowing full well that it may end relationships. That's why the superintendency is, or can be, a lonely position. And members of the board, I think you need to understand that and try to be empathetic and supportive of your superintendent, because it is a heavy lift for any individual to be responsible for the livelihood of people, the well-being of people, the profession that they have chosen. There are a lot of things that move forward and difficult decisions to be made that can affect their families, the employees' families, and their futures. I don't expect that Corey will make those decisions lightly, and I do expect him to be fair and balanced about how he proceeds forward. I do not have any doubt that he will and has been able to make difficult decisions, but in a way that is respectful and gives the individual dignity. And that's a tough one to do as well. Collaboration, I know that's Corey's calling card. I think that's an amazing thing that he has. Not everybody can do it, but that's just the way he's put together. He empowers staff. These are the things that lead to successful long-term superintendencies that change the course for students. One of the key things is being able to evaluate the outcomes of the district programs, no matter whether they have become part of the district perception of reality. Sometimes you have to look at programs and services and say, you know, I know we've had this going on for 15 years, but it's not currently producing the impacts or the outcomes that we desire, and we need to take a look at changing or modifying it. Another superintendent of mine, friend of colleague of mine, came into a district where they had a particular mode in the small high school. She evaluated the system and the program and said, look, this is not producing the outcomes you have professed and are all agreeing that are the things we need to do. And she tried to tweak and modify it. But those individuals who had been invested in this program did all the things you're not supposed to do as a professional, came forward, made things up about her and her intention, said things in the community that were not true. And so they were creating an atmosphere to stop her from doing what was proper and right, because they were personally invested. It was about the adults, not about the children or the students. And too often in education, that I've seen in the 40 years I've been in it, is that controversies come from adult concerns. They're always fronted with, well, this is about the students. We're here for the children. When in fact, they're there for themselves or their friends or their family. And that's a tough one, Corey. That's a difficult one. That's a difficult wave to surf. And again, from personal experience, you need to keep doing those things because that is the way a true leader leads. And I know you will. And I know you'll probably do it far better than I ever did because you're better at dealing with emotions and concerns and giving people the dignity they deserve, empowering your staff to succeed, encouraging them to set goals. I think enhancing self-esteem is kind of his go-to thing. 10 tips for board members. Hey, go slow in the beginning for you two new board members. A lot of times people come in and join the board thinking they're going to make a huge difference and change things immediately. Remember, you're only one vote, and that you need to agree to the consensus of the board. Remember that your authority only lies in your corporate action. In the community, you're just another member of the community. You are a member of the board, but you have no authority until you're seated at the table. This is a hard one. Sometimes even because of political differences or philosophical disagreements, that those disagreements can degenerate into personal conflict. I don't know what's wrong in the country. We can't have a discussion about our beliefs and our disagreements without demonizing the other person. Don't let that happen to you. Don't let that happen to the board. When difficult decisions come before the board and a decision is made, you've had a chance to state your opinion, share your experience, move forward. Don't think poorly of your other board members if they have a different opinion. Don't talk too much. That's probably good advice for me. Listening is probably the most important thing for you. We talked a little bit about trying to stay out of the personnel issues and teacher problems. When a teacher or a staff member comes to you, redirect them back to the process. Have you spoken to your principal? Have you spoken to the next person in line at the district? Have you spoken to Corey? Listen, be respectful, direct them back, give them a process. Don't give them the impression that you're going to fix a problem or that you personally are going to change or do something about it. You don't have the authority to do that. It's not your role. Your role is to support your superintendent and direct your staff, the staff or community members back through the process. Give your superintendent and staff support in public. You know what? That was a tough decision Corey had to make. It was a tough one, and I support him. We all may have made a different decision, but it was a decision within his authority, and he made it, and we're moving forward. So support your staff in public. It's difficult, but be informed to the best of your ability. That means making sure you read the board packets, that you're talking to Corey about questions, you're listening to what's going on throughout the state and the nation as it affects your district. Welcome people who come to you about their problems, but don't give them the impression that you're there to solve their problems. We talked about 8 or 9 rather, when the group with a special interest, be it a curriculum or an anti-policy group, which most districts have now, they come and they talk about, well, masks are one of the most recent ones. Again, insist on your right to review the facts before you act. Don't tell them where you're going to go until you have heard both sides of the story, if you will, or all the facts that are presented. You, as a member of the board, are a very important part of the leadership of the community. You have a serious impact on the lives of all the students, the staff, and the future of your community. It's an awesome responsibility. And I know that none of you take it lightly. So again, congratulations for that. I want to stop there again and see if there's any thoughts or comments at that point in time or questions.
Steve, I actually want to go back to the beginning, and I missed that when you asked last time. If we go back to that picture, and I thought this was a good learning experience, and this is what happened to me. If I saw the one face, it was difficult to figure out how I could get back to the other face. The one I saw obscured the one I wasn't. And then the same thing happened in reverse. So I think that's a really good image of how you can get bogged down in a partial view and that it's really important to open up and look sideways, upwards, downwards when you're doing things.
Yeah, and here's the reality. Reality is it's the same picture, but it really has two meanings. And that's what you're going to have all the time. And you need to be able to understand the fact that some people can't see the beautiful woman or the older lady that's in the picture. I was in Valdez, and one of the new board members couldn't see both pictures, could not see the other image. And you're going to have people who cannot empathize or see that their position or their view is not the only position that's out there that is correct. And so you're absolutely right. And it's sometimes difficult to move back and forth, but the board really needs to work hard at trying to do that so that they can empathize and understand. To understand where people are coming from and why, maybe not agree with them, but understand why they may be there saying or doing what they're doing. What else? You guys are too quiet. It means I'm talking too much.
No, I liked it, made notes.
So I think I want to jump over, Corey. Let's see. I wanted to talk for a few minutes, and I've been talking for 40. Let me see if I can go over here to, where is it, Corey? I want your presentation of your goals.
I think it's the second item there.
This one?
Yes.
You're so good.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Corey, congratulations. This is a great document. You have put a tremendous amount of work into this. And congratulations to the board for putting together, their goals and Corey coming forward with, plans. A couple things. One, it's a lot, Corey. Members, ladies and gentlemen of the board, this is a lot. And this is not a one-year set. These things are going to take a lot of time to get a lot of this taken care of. And oh, by the way, when things are moving along smoothly, and then you get a freeze, and all of a sudden there's water pumping into the buildings, or you have damage to the buildings, a tree has fallen on one of your schools, which happened in Beaverton. Things stop because you got to take care of this health and safety needs of the staff and the students. So all of the good work, all of the things you're trying to do kind of get pushed aside for a bit. You don't stop them, but you have to understand that Corey's responsible for the day-to-day operation of a large number of people, a big business, probably one, if not the largest, one of the largest businesses in the community. And there are lots of moving parts. There's a lot of personalities. There are a lot of issues that come up. And to keep your focus on the needs and what's best for kids is difficult when you've got a 4-inch line of water pumping inside a building, because that sort of grabs your attention. And you need to take care of that, whether it's Saturday or Sunday or midnight on Friday night. That's what he's called to do, and he's going to do it. He's going to do a great job for you. I won't say that the goals are a little optimistic, but I would caution the board to be gracious about the fact that this is a very optimistic agenda, and that just the day-to-day operation of the district, dealing with concerns of staff, students, and parents, and the state and the feds, are going to take away from his ability, his time to forward all of these agendas. And Corey, go back to, you got to take care of yourself. You can't work 14 hours a day, every day, and weekends too. You need to be able to put things aside. You need to be able to prioritize what you need to get done for the near future. and then move forward, not forgetting the future of these goals, but being able to get through the day to day, the week, the month, to make sure that things are moving ahead smoothly without it really having a negative impact on you personally. So congratulations. This is a well put together piece of work. Corey, I don't know, and maybe you can answer. How often do you give these updates to the board?
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Louder. I appreciate that. Steve, thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
We've gone over them once at a quarterly review, and I plan to go over a small portion of the slide deck when we have a chance to talk about it at the end of February. And with the board president, I go over new additions at our monthly meeting. And then with our 2 new board members, we had a couple-hour session a week ago Friday, and we went over it as well too, so I could catch them up to speed on exactly what I had been up to the last 6 months.
Yeah, no kidding. A lot. Like I said, this is great work. It's really well done for a first-year superintendent. And I'm pleased that you have talked about your professional growth and your mentorship and your support network. By the way, I hope you consider me part of that network. My advice is what it's worth, and that's probably nothing, but it's at least free, and it's 40 years worth of experience. So if nothing else, you can call and just say, what are your thoughts? And you can not act on it, but it's there for you if you want. So it's there. You can always reach out, and no matter where you are or what you're doing, call me. So other than that, folks, I do think, I'm sorry, Corey, go ahead.
I just thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And it's nice to know that my network is slowly and incrementally growing. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah. And by the way, members of the board, let me just say, feel free to call me if you have any thoughts or questions. I'm free. My advice is free, and I have a lot of experience. It may not be appropriate or what you're looking for, but I'm willing to share if you're interested. And I do that because I think it's important to give back and try to support one of the most important things we do in this country, and that's public education. And again, thank you for doing this, because I do truly believe that public education is the focus of our democracy. And if without a good public education, we will lose our democracy. And that is critical to me. Folks, what other questions or concerns? Again, other than I think it's a bit optimistic, and I'm a little concerned about Corey, not because he's not capable and working hard, but because it may be too much. And the board needs to understand that. And by the way, Corey, I don't think you're too nice. I think you deal with difficult things with respect, with kindness, and you give people support, and you honor them for what they've done. And you can still say no, or you can still discipline people without being a bad person or an angry person. And that's a tricky piece, but you are the kind of personality that can do that. So congratulations. Gratitude is a good one to end with. I'm grateful for the work you're doing and the fact that you picked an awesome superintendent. What other questions can you have for me? I'm pleased with this. I have no problem invoking the 2-year guarantee. And not that I want to use it, but it's certainly there. I think you're doing awesome work, and wish you all the best.
Well, excellent. I just want to say thank you for your time, Steve, and taking us through the activities that you had for us and the information as well. So we appreciate that. And I'll let any board members say anything if they'd like as well.
Steve, how will we make him stop?
What, Corey? You know what, the funny thing is, it's difficult because it's people are wired that way, and you sometimes have to just step in, and it's usually the board chair, but the board members individually can just say, look, get out of here, go home, take care of yourself, go see your family. And because they are so giving. They're so dedicated, so professional. Make sure that he takes his vacations. Do not allow him to buy those days back as much as he might need the money. He also needs time off. He needs time away, which doesn't mean even when you're away, doesn't mean you're disconnected, because when that pipe bursts, they're going to call him. And even if he's on vacation in Hawaii or somewhere else, they're going to call and say, hey, Corey, this is what we're doing. Just want to let you know. Okay, sounds like you're doing a good job. Keep it up. Thanks. Keep me posted. It is a difficult thing. It's a strength for him. It's one of his greatest strengths. It's probably also one of his biggest weaknesses. Just monitor him. Be not only an educational member of the team, but be a friend. And sometimes that is going in and sitting down and saying, Corey, I'm concerned about you. Or, you're looking tired. Why don't you take a day? What can you do to get some time off to rest up? We need you. We don't need you sick. It's a hard one. What else?
Comment if that's okay. Philosophy of education, kind of the highest endpoint is getting to wisdom. So I was going to say there's a very wise presentation for all of us, I think, and I appreciate that. I have a favorite drumbeat on performance goals and how that is managed. And you very rightly said it is never a point in time. And so it's rather awkward doing goals in the educational system as opposed to where I'm used to, and it's more confidential in the private sector. You can be more personal, and it's easier to be dynamic and continuous. Here we have Public Meetings Acts and things like that to handle it. But against that background, and I've said this before to the old board, and I think I would really like to use the opportunity because I think it's a fit. We're talking about don't be overly optimistic and help each other out, mutual support. Is there two words that I always think about, or three perhaps? One is that goals should be dynamic. And if you're continuously evaluating those goals, you're going to find you should be changing them during the year. They shouldn't be fixed. You can remember what the original ones were. So be dynamic. But the other one is the role of the board or the role of the supervisor. Over and over again, the word that's really, really important is being a good coach. Mm-hmm. And it's our job to coach each other and to help coach Corey. If he overreaches, tell him, don't set yourself up. And to have a lot of gratitude and grace when circumstances change. That whole sort of dynamic approach to goal setting, to me, makes a good organization and team.
Well said. I'm having trouble with my Zoom. I don't know. Can you still see me?
No, we mostly still see the slide deck.
Yeah, I can't stop sharing, so it'll.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry about that. Anyway, again, it's been a pleasure working with you. I'm very impressed by the work you're doing in your community. Great community, working hard, tough times, and you're getting through it. And getting through it together is what it's all about. I can't tell you how many times I've been through grueling budget cuts and reductions and layoffs and difficult things. But it is what it is. And just remember that every storm does end and the sun comes up. So it too will shine financially, and all the other things will come around. It just takes time. So patience and staying together and supporting each other is really what it's all about. So congratulations on developing an amazing leadership team. Thank you again. Again, feel free to give me a call or an email. Corey, congratulations. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot. Folks, there's one more extremely important thing. And this comes from me, not only as your consultant in your search, but as a superintendent of 30 plus years. I don't know if you've had an opportunity, but Corey needs to be the full-time superintendent, not the interim superintendent. And so you need to address that. You're sending a message of lack of support by having him be under a contract that says interim. He's not your interim, he's your superintendent. I can't believe that anybody is going to feel any differently. Change that contract as soon as you feel you can. Give him not only the verbal support, but the written support that he is your choice and your superintendent, and move forward. The sooner you do that, the sooner you send a good, clear message to the community that you are the leadership team and that you trust each other and that you're moving forward together. Corey, I don't know, or board, have you guys had that discussion?
We will have I think we'll have the conversation during my evaluation at the end of the month in February. So my plan is to work with Dr. Price and come up with a variety of options that the board can take action on at the end of the month.
Well, I think the variety of action, Corey, is one. They need to give you a permanent contract. That's my opinion. And like I said, it's worth what you pay for it, which is nothing. I can tell you from my years of experience, it is a very important step forward. And I do encourage the board to move forward on that as soon as possible. Again, thank you all for doing this. I think it's been a great process. And I think you've got an amazing first-year superintendent. You guys
Dr. Louder.
Yes.
This is Maria. I just wanted to share with my colleagues here that you have been a really important asset in the whole transition between superintendents. Our search committee, you and I got to work quite a bit together during the superintendent search, even afterwards, even after Corey's most recently, a couple months ago, Dr. Louder was reaching out to me, checking in. So we will probably take you up on those free services you're offering. But just, like, again, the working relationship that Steve and I had during the search, and then afterwards, some of you guys didn't get to see that from the back end. But thank you for being actively involved in our school district, wherever you are.
Part of our time together, and maybe he'll pop back in and maybe he won't, but we have Dr. Price here, Michelle, is ready to rock and roll for us. So
Yes,
we
good
can-
afternoon.
Yeah.
Miranda, I'm Michelle. It's very nice to meet you. You're just fine. Yes. You missed out on lunch though, so I hope you get to eat. Oh, good. Good. All right. Well, first, why don't you take a quick stretch break? It's hard to sit that long and just sit. So, oh, there he is.
Now he's on mute.
There. I missed all the wonderful things you were saying. I'm sorry. It was great. Thank you.
Did you?
It was, you were too kind. That's all I know. That's all.
I just want to say thank you for your support during from the start till now. I was just sharing that even what a lot of people didn't see was the interaction that you and I had through email, even after Corey was hired, just most recently in the last couple of months. We connected at WASTA as well. So thank you for your support, and we will take you up on those free services.
Okay. All right. Listen, thanks so much again. Have a wonderful day. I'm sorry I talked too much, but once in a while, the old guys in the room, or sometimes I won't say the old women, but the old guys in the room, I can speak for myself, want to share. And, the whole thing about wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from making a lot of mistakes. So if I have any wisdom, it's because I made a lot of mistakes over my career. So hopefully I can share some wisdom about the experiences and mistakes I've made. But thanks again, you guys. Good luck. Best of luck. Corey, congratulations. You're going to do an amazing job.
Thank you so much, Steve. We appreciate your time.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye.
Break, and I will tee up my presentation here.
Stretching a little bit. Stretch it, work it.
All right, just making sure I don't have an echo. Did I do that right?
So warm now compared to what it was with 8 degrees.
On mute. I'm gonna have to plug in eventually, so I'm gonna pull this over just so I can. Is that okay?
You want to stand there?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
If I put it right where the table is there, will that? I don't need to be on camera, the board does. Unless you have a, what's that? Not in front of the screen? Do you have a power cord? That's all I need to do is plug this in. I'm muted here, so I'm not echoing, right? Good. All right. Good afternoon. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for having me. I also come free to you. So it's one of the few things from the ESD that we're able to do without a fee. So because I haven't met Tucker and Miranda before, just a little bit about me. My name is Michelle Price. I'm the superintendent in our Central Educational Service District. I believe in relationships and about being personable. So this is really informal. If you have questions, you need anything, but before you can do that with me, you need to get to know me a little bit. So I have a couple slides just to tell you a little bit of my story. I have been the superintendent at the ESD for this is my 7th year, which is hard to believe. But I'm from the region. I've been a special ed teacher, an elementary principal, an assistant superintendent, a superintendent, Tacoma, Soap Lake, Moses Lake. So I've been big in small districts. But the majority of my career and my family was in Moses Lake. And so, you know, those Wenatchee Panthers, we were nemesis, right? But it was all in good fun. So I did graduate from Moses Lake High School, went to Central for my BA degree and my master's degree. I have a doctorate from WSU. This is I kept saying 40 years. I'm like, gosh, this is my 37th year in public education. So It seems like yesterday. I'm very involved both at the state and national level. So you see here a couple of pictures. This group here is, we all were wearing I Love Public Education t-shirts. We were advocating in Washington, D.C., part of the National Superintendents Association Governing Board, participate there. I do some significant work in women in leadership work across the state and the nation. I love kids. I love to gather people together. And this is my family. So 4 adult children, they're all married. They all have their own children. So I have 7 grandchildren. That's my husband up there. 2 girls, 2 boys. They are best of friends and just love the outdoors. So I love the picture of the rafting. I put that in there because that is my 78-year-old dad in the front of that raft. And I think I want to be like him one day. So those are my 4 kids in the corner there. I also believe strongly in having a good work-life balance, which means I value relationships, and we have a good friendship circle that provides support. None of them work in public education though, because as we just heard from Steve, being a superintendent and being friends with people in the education system can kind of be hard. So, good, just a team of girlfriends that we've been able to raise our kids together and spend a lot of time together, and a couple of friends, and just life is good. So that's a KB.
Okay.
And you know, when you're a big family, I loved how our photographer set that up because each of the kids has their own family, and you can see that how they're all made up there. So yeah, it was fun. That was 2 grandkids ago. So we've added 2 since then. My daughter-in-law told me we better get another family photo going before we add another one. So I'm like, yes. I know, right? I know. Yes. Yeah, right now Palmer, who's the little one with the headband on there, she just turned 2, and the couple on the end were just learned they were expecting her at the time of this photo. So it was like, okay. Anyway, so that's me in a nutshell. I did come to the board before here in August and spend some time, and I just wanted a real quick kind of run through. And I'm just going to do like the crash course of what we did, because a lot of it was what Steve just went over. So we did talk about the challenges of being a school board member today. You know, there's some harsh realities, some really difficult decisions. There's a lot of political pressures, things that push into your community, and yet trying to make sure that you maintain local control. And it's challenging to figure out that balance. And the student safety and well-being, equity and diversity, making sure that every child has what they need in your school system to be able to excel. Having transparency with your community. So just all of those things are pressures that are the continually boiling pot for you as a board and as a leadership team. We talked about the characteristics of an effective board. So just looking at, you know, aligning your resources. I loved that he was able to share your report. What you guys have done really, really well as a district is your strategic plan drives your goals, drives your work, drives your priorities. And as you're looking at some, you know, challenges, you're able to go back to that and say, okay, what in this is our priority that we can maintain and keep doing. So, taking part in training together, that's what we're doing now, working collaboratively, eating together, you know, sharing a meal. Those are all important things. That was a picture I showed back then. I'm gonna skip on that because I didn't add the 2 new board members yet to it. So, but we did look at this back in August. And so there the board members were then. We talked about research and just how this relationship really is important as a governance team. We talked about self, your why. Why are you here? What's important to you? And how do you show up every day? And we shared that. We were vulnerable with each other and talked about that. What's your why at being here at the table? Then we talked about just kind of a little bit of, you know, where do our behaviors come from? How do they come to us and through us? And we brought up genes and having our upbringing, our environment, all play a factor there. We looked at the golden circle work, which is Simon Sinek's work, and we talked about act, thinking, and communicating inside out. We looked at our why. We looked at our how, which were your habits, and we talked about your goals. We talked about your circle of influence, and we talked about relationships. We talked about trust. This was a little fun activity that we did. And actually, I'm going to jump out of here for a quick second, and I'm going to pop in and grab a photo. Let's share again. Ha, look at this. So yeah, we talked about trust, and we actually did an activity where we asked, what does trust feel like, sound like, look like? And so the board members contributed to this. And so what trust looked like was that it felt safe and secure, comfort, confidence, open and good, commitment to relationships, inviting, vulnerable, safe, allows vulnerability and honesty, sincere, give each other space, peaceful, was what trust felt like. We used a little thermometer to feel like. What does trust sound like? So when you're working together, it sounded like honesty, open, clear, being straightforward, being consistent, being a listener, compassionate, non-judgmental, actively listening, giving feedback. And what does it look like? Following through on our actions, sincerity, giving eye contact, engaged with our body language, being collegial, having proximity with each other, consistency, calm, steady, approachable, kind, welcoming, friendly, engaging, supportive. All right, let me hop back out of here, see if I can pull this off. I can't do it as easily as I thought I could. There it is. Nope, there it's not. Hold on. Go back to the Zoom, share the screen. There it is, and slideshow. Voila.
Pretty good.
Y'all should be impressed. It doesn't usually work that way. All right, then we talked about what's it mean to be trustworthy, because not only does it feel, to look and sound to be trust, but what does it mean for you to be trustworthy? And these were some of the things that we talked about for this board. Having authenticity, showing support for your team members, respecting ideas, words, and actions in sync, seeking feedback, communicating openly. I shared this quote, which is one of my very favorites. You're all going to go through very tumultuous times, and things aren't always easy, but we can still be respectful and work together, collegial. I'm a baseball mom, or was a baseball mom, raising my kids, so I thought every team player has a role in the team, right? And you wouldn't want the catcher being out in second base, because that just wouldn't work well. And so we talked about the different roles and responsibilities, about the school board being strategic with the vision, looking at the desired outcomes, the governance part, the operational with the staff. That's our human talent that's on the ground day to day with the kids and in the buildings with the families. And then the tactical, the superintendent really bringing that together. Again, relationships, you'll hear me say that constantly, how important it is. There's some research-based roles of an effective school board that we took a look at, and I'm going to read them all to you. Again, looking at your strategic plan as an organization, you guys stay true to this with your focus on kids and community, advocating for all children. Being an effective board member, again, those things that were identified in the trust part. Collaborating together, and reciprocal accountability. So that was an overview of what we did for 3 hours back in August. And so that led us to this part where we talked about, didn't get to, and we said, oh, we'll do this at a future date. And it cracks me up because Steve and Corey and I just did a quick talk about what today would look like. And Steve's like, I'll do this. And then Corey is like, how about you do this? And I was like, perfect. That's where we left off, which was so interesting. When I went back and looked at the PowerPoint, it was like, oh, okay, I just changed the date on this because we didn't get to this back in August. But one of the things that Steve talked about is that every board should have their board operating principles and their norms. And then he also talked about reviewing annually your ethics, and you're having a session on ethics. And I thought, well, how timely was that? He didn't even know we were planning this, because around the room, we're going to talk about some norms and some ethics today, and have an opportunity to get up out of your seat and be working together. So you guys good with that? All right. So first off, Wenatchee School District does have a policy on ethical conduct. So I'm going to share that with you here. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Kim, do you need one? All right, if you'll just take a look at this policy here. Policy 1815 does talk about your ethical conduct for school directors. You as a team, and I include Corey in that, do have, again, these policy statement for ethical, working ethically together. I also want to say congratulations and thank you on your service. I put this little slide here, but January is School Board Recognition Month. There's no question that the work you do is invaluable to your community. It takes an inordinate amount of time that none of you could have ever imagined, and yet it is so needed here. And so thank you for your service. All right, looking at your policy here, you have 5 key pieces there. That's the individual responsibility of each of you. And I'm not going to read them to you. I have them on slides and you've got it in the policy in front of you. So if you would please just read through those real quick, and then I'm going to ask you for a couple of responses. All right, what strikes you about these 5 ethics statements here?
I would say that there's a lot about making sure you're being responsible to not just each other, but also to the broader community.
Great, thank you, Tucker. Responsibility to the broader community. I think we heard Steve talk about that in your roles and responsibilities, right? As a board member, you are a representative of your community here at the table. Yep, good, thank you. Other thing that stood out with you with these?
Well, as listed here, ethical behavior is an individual responsibility. So to me, this means self-monitoring to avoid any of these 5 violations or principles, I guess. And so for me, that just stood out. We are responsible for addressing our own violations or avoiding those violations. And we're not going to wait till somebody holds us account. It's the gotcha moment, right?
Right.
So that's self.
Yes, as a school board, your gotcha moment can be in the next election, right? The reality is you have a set of standards that you want to operate by, and it is self-reflection. It is about self-monitoring. You do have a little statement in here if somebody doesn't follow these of how it would be handled, but really it's about taking care of your own behavior and your own thoughts and actions as you come to the board, but it's also outside in the community. Once you're a board member, you're always a board member, right? Anywhere you go, oh, you're on the school board. Oh, you're the superintendent. So you get to show up as a school board member in everything that you do, and taking these ethical principles with you matter. Okay? Anything else?
Yeah, I think it's about affirming that even though we are individuals with individual backgrounds, what we're doing to service to this board and to this district is the primary purpose of our job. So every decision should be motivated by what is in the best interest for the district as a whole and our students, not individual interests or the one or two voters who may have got you here. It's evaluating everything that we do as what is in the best interest of the district and not ourselves or our individuals constituents.
That's great, Julie. Thank you. Yeah, so you all heard the old saying that the squeaky wheel gets oil, right? And that can't be how you operate. You have to operate from above the board, what's in the best interest of the entire community. And you often know so many more details and so much more information from the inside out, right? I get to have my perspective out in the community where I live, and your principals, you hire them to manage a building and to support a staff and a school community, and that's what you expect them to do, but yet they don't have your view either, and so on throughout your community and your staff. So, great. Anything else stand out to you in your ethics principles here?
Just adding it from a different perspective. I was sitting there scratching my head saying, well, yeah, those are obvious if you expect, to Julie saying the right thing and everybody saying the right thing. So just going a different word, board members are custodians and they are fiduciaries for the organizations and people whose interests we're supposed to be representing. So, I'm taking it right out of education into a more quasi-legal context.
Yes,
And it's
absolutely.
not like that.
And many of your statements here do talk about that fiscal responsibility, making sure that the resources are used to the best interest of the community and not abused. So very good.
Yeah, and you're custodian of well-being as well as material things.
Yes, thank you. And not to underestimate the custodial being of the humans in your system too, right? The human capital. All right, well, I wanted to start with this as you talk about norms and principles. The next pages are what's currently in place for the Wenatchee School District operating norms. These are not in policy, they're just statements out on your website. So I didn't find them anywhere in policy, but they have been adopted or put out there to the public as how you want to operate. And so as I was looking at resources such as Washington State standards for board members, and then I was looking at your operating principles that you currently have and looking at your ethics policy, I thought, I think we have some opportunity here to talk about what other operating norms might you like to see as a school community. And so I'm going to have you just take a minute and go through your current operating norms and ask you just on that board meeting norms if there's anything that strikes you there. And I put highlighters and pens at your table there. If there's something that you want to mark up or bring up, please feel free to do so. Can be useful while you're reading. Do you want some water? Okay. All right, let's just take a minute and talk about these. What did you find as you look through the board operating principles and meeting norms?
I think one that stuck out most for myself is that we as the board, whether that it's been made, motion or seconded, just to make sure you provide that transparency, making sure we're providing that clarity, giving our community and everyone that attends virtually or in person, the reasoning behind some of these decisions that are made, providing that clarity of the information that we have before the board or what Corey has with the decisions that we are making, making sure there's no discrepancy or miscommunication along the way, and hopefully encouraging others, if there's more questions, we can provide those questions when we feasibly can. That way it can build that continuity and trust among everybody, because it's not just a board's collaborative effort, but a collaborative effort with our community members as well.
Great, thank you, Miranda. Julie?
Yeah, one thing I noticed is, although it makes it a little bit redundant, is that we should probably add to norm number 4 that board discussion is for the purpose, not only a business purpose of seeking clarity and further understanding, but for transparency. I think it's captured a little bit below, but just extra highlighting that our board discussion is for transparency.
So when you think of your ethics and then you think of your norms, to incorporate that language in there.
Right.
Okay, good. Anything else struck you, Tucker?
They said my statement. I will not repeat it.
Noted.
Following norm number 10.
No redundancy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was gonna say like what they said, but it talks a lot about discussion's important. And I like for what they said, I'm now gonna repeat it. But I guess I didn't like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then like, let's vote, as opposed to, no, let's let the community understand how we're feeling, how we're thinking, because it really is like the feedback I got during during the election time was no one ever asked my opinion, because there's no back and forth in citizen comment. So if you can at least give someone, this is why we're making a decision, this is what we're thinking, then hopefully they at least say, oh, I guess I understand that, instead of just being like, those in favor, those opposed, and we're done.
And there's some that you'll never make happy no matter what, but being open and transparent and requesting feedback and how you request it is important. Yeah. Anything else about your norms that you guys noticed?
Well, I think I will repeat. The 4th and 5th bullet, I was reading the 4th bullet and I'm like, board discussion. I'm like, oh yeah, state the position and why. But then I read the following and it's like, wait, this seems to me to kind of be talking about two different things, but kind of not. Board discussion usually happens when you have a motion on the floor, before you make a vote. We normally don't, we have board communication, but not necessarily board discussion as an agenda item.
Mhm.
So to me, it's either the same thing or two different things. Anybody else interpret it that way? So the board adheres to the topics on the agenda. Board discussion is for the business purpose of seeking clarity, further understanding, and being prepared to take action. Being prepared to take action. So that is, then it goes into after a motion. So I think they need to be combined because we don't really have a discussion agenda item.
No, I interpret that to be discussion in another agenda item which permitted discussion, but it's not necessarily clear in the way it's written.
Okay,
Whereas communication is a separate issue, separate item.
okay. So then being prepared to take action.
It could also be when we have a presentation and we open it up for discussion afterwards and comment.
I just interpreted it as anytime a board might potentially have discussion, whether it's in relation to a presentation or it's because a motion is on the table, in which case, yeah, 4 and 5 are a little bit duplicative. But I also looked at 5, and what I would actually do is just cross out where it says an important or controversial agenda item. And because it really, I think discussion, as I was interpreting it for transparency purposes, should be encouraged after kind of any agenda item. So maybe that, I don't know if that creates more mud in the water, but I didn't see them as, I could see them as two separate things if we were only talking about important or controversial, and then which case discussion to me was more like just any time after a motion, after a presentation. I don't know, you might be looking at it too closely.
I want to widen it and then shut it down because some of these were prepared after a period of conflict in an older board. And I can see, and Maria can probably, and Julie too, can see some of the reasons, and they're really good. I don't want to go there right now. But a couple of things that are in here that I feel I don't adhere to completely. And one that we as a board at the superintendent level have taken, and they both relate to discussion. I often do not explain my vote, and sometimes that seems redundant. And that might be a discussion of what's best practice, because sometimes it seems obvious that we've heard it, it's a good argument, just, say yes, yes, yes. Or other times it is going to reinforce the district if you give a short summary. So that would be an ask for some common practices that would be healthiest. And the other one where there has been a change on citizen comment is, no, we do not, board members do not respond. But there was a specific operational undocumented change that the superintendent would reply without engaging in discussion, but clarify something related to a comment if it was necessary. And that's what normally happens. But board members do not do that in communication. And so that would be another question. I think it's probably a good idea for board members in general not to do it in communication because you widen the debate unnecessarily. But I think it's very good for it not to just go out into thin air, but that puts the spotlight on the superintendent. He's the person, or she's the person that does, they are the person that does that. So I don't know what other board members would think about that aspect of responding, because you're right about citizen comment. And sometimes people feel it's just spitting into the wind.
All right, good. We're going to do a little workaround with these, and these may be board meeting norms that you want to live with. You might want to add things to it. I'm going to share with you some standards, and yours are broken up. You have board meeting norms, and then you have operating norms, right? So the board meeting norms, really, as you've listed them, are how you do business as a school board. Sometimes you would see that in policy. And then the operating norms, what you have on the second page here. I'm going to share with you, Washington State does have some board standards. I'm going to share those with you here, and then we're going to do an activity to see if you want to expand yours, change yours, add to, revise, and we'll work through a process there. So the first one is under values and ethical behavior. So these are the standards. I pulled these from WASDA. There was a lot of research that went into them. They cite all the sources with it. I did not. I'm just saying I pulled them from WASDA. But putting students' needs first, the commitment to equity and high standards, commitment to treating each other with dignity and respect, having high ethical standards, and advocating for public education. We all know and feel right now public education does feel like it's under attack. We have both ends of the spectrum of things that we're trying to respond to or to try to hold true to our community values. And this is an area that can be challenging. On the leadership side of the house, for standards, contributing to thoughtful governance discussions, being well-informed, open-minded, being very deliberate and deliberative. Where's the authority? Steve talked about that with the whole board is where the authority lies. Articulating and modeling appropriate roles and responsibilities. Participating in directors' duties and responsibilities. Sometimes you'll have committee groups or small task force. Policymaking, respecting that role. Be sure to be adopting board policies. On the communication front, building and maintaining those positive connections, not only with the community, but also with staff. And how do you do that? This is that communicating accurately and honestly, making sure that your impact of your words, you're aware of what they are, listening with an open mind, maintaining civility, referring people and their needs to the appropriate people for their concerns, welcoming your family, staff, community input. Many ways to do that. Professional development. What you're doing today. It's a huge commitment on your part to take time off work to be here, away from your families, staying on top of issues, research, applicable laws, what's going on in the legislature right now, participating in the professional development as a team. Accountability, contributing as a team, taking personal responsibility, respecting and abiding by board decisions. Sometimes we don't all agree, but it means that when we walk out the door, we're going to live with that decision and support each other in it. Complying with those board policies. Commitment to educational equity. This is in everything you do in Wenatchee, in your board goals, your strategic plan, ongoing learning about what is educational equity. How does it relate to your role as a board member? Seeking to understand your own culture and how it may differ from others. Honoring diverse experiences. What are the barriers in your system? Collaboratively and proactively helping to remove those barriers. Fostering a culture of dignity and respect. So those are and here again are your norms. I just had those on the slide from the last presentation and decided it would be easier to have them in front of you on paper. So what I'd like to do is start with the values and ethical behavior. And I'd like you to consider what your operating norms have, what your ethics statement says in your policy 1815, and what you think your norms, operating principles should look like, sound like, putting all those pieces together. And I'd like you just to individually reflect for a few minutes. And I will put that slide back on the values and ethics. There we go. And you have these in front of you. You can highlight, you can cut and paste, whatever works for you to write them down. I gave you a little notepad. And what I'm going to have you do is individually for about 10 minutes, just kind of reflect on what do you think if you were to write operating norms that included the values and ethics, what would that sound like in your operating norms? And then after you have some individual time, I'm going to break you up into two and have the two groups of three, put them all together and for you guys to come up with statements, and then we'll compare and see if we can come up with some that everybody agrees on. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
So, Martin, Lyle?
I'm an engineer and my reaction, or one of my choices, is we invented something 5 years ago. I'd rather look at the Washington ones and see if there's what's in ours that's missing from theirs, and then what's in theirs that we don't think that's redundant, rather than try and reinvent freelance.
Okay,
And if I were to work individually, I'd love to have that on paper and I would do the exercise that way around, not the other way around. And that's just purely the way my brain works.
okay. And you can take that, how your brain wants to put that
But-
together. I think we're saying to do the same thing.
The end is the same, but the
End is the same.
pathway is
Yes.
different.
Your engineer pathway is way different than my special ed teacher pathway. But you know we're gonna get to the same end, right? So what can I do to help you get there? You have both pieces available. Okay, let's see if we can get them printed. Okay. You got it. Let me start.
Sorry for doing that, but
Oh, no.
I would just feel
No. Yes, no, we. You might find some of these standards fit better to your actual operating principles
Well,
than your
that's
meeting norms.
kind of what I'm looking at is
Mhm.
as I go through how we've got it
Divided.
divided, most of these are covered in one way, shape or form anyway.
Yes,
And so I'm like, oh, are we just
yeah,
adding
you
more
just, you can highlight and say, yep, got that one
Yep,
covered
yep,
here, yep,
it's
got
kind
that
of
one
like-
covered here.
variations on a theme song, but we
Yes.
seem to kind of have it.
Yeah, our goal is really just to look at them, the two, and see, is there anything missing in yours that you'd like to see added or changed? Through understanding what's a common standard in your practices. All right, since we're just doing the values and ethical behavior standard here, anybody want to share? We can. What'd you find in your operating principles or your norms?
I would say that, the A and B on there are very much students' needs first and a commitment to equity and high standards of achievement for each and every student. So like 2/3 of those are talking pretty directly about student outcomes and student focus. And I feel like we're not, in our operating principles, aren't putting that same level of emphasis on that.
Okay,
Like being supportive of student, staff, and administration, and establish priorities and keep district resources focused on student learning. That's of these 10 things, that's kind of the only place we touch on it. And so that might be something we would want to include more directly in here, is just the focus on students, as opposed to something like listen to and represent the community. So there's a little bit of a push-pull for me in representing the community and representing the students, in the sense that we weren't elected by the students. They didn't have that voice. So how are we going to represent not two different factions, but understanding that there's multiple people in the room, and we have to decide where our focus is, and putting some things in here might be helpful for that.
Yeah, I'll echo that a little bit. These were sort of, I think, more clearly drafted to almost manage our conduct versus how we're making a decision. And so I agree that in looking through this, we seem to have most elements covered in terms of how we operate. But I did agree and notice that probably if we were going to add a principle into how we're making decisions, we need to better emphasize that we're making decisions based on what is in the best interest of the students and keeping the students central to our focus. So I think it was kind of vaguely there in number 1, but that we're establishing priorities to keep focus on students. But I think it should be clearer to say that we make decisions based on what is in the best interest of the students, and then adding other elements in terms of equitable decisions and treating each other maybe with dignity and respect, and modeling the high ethical standard. So I think adding more to how we decision make, not just this is what you do as a board member. So it's a little bit clearer.
With respect to that first one, it's not in 1815 in the policy. It is in the first item on board operating principles. Very similarly, it talks about learning, not needs. The place that I always go to that is more of a hybrid of this is the oath of office. And I can't remember the exact wording, but that's in the interests of education. And that brings up there are multiple beneficiaries of education, the students and the community. And they're all subtly different. And one reason I asked to do this is to link our existing documents with a vanilla model and see where the gaps are. Because you're right, that this one here that we did was a conduct improvement Band-Aid.
It was a playground rules that we created due to the historical.
right. And you're an evolutionary group,
Yeah, we
right?
are.
And so you've evolved and things may have changed. They may not have. You may still feel like these are foundational board norms that you want to keep in place and that they don't need any changes, or you may feel like you want to make some changes. You're a new team working together. And so making sure that they reflect this team's operating principles and how you want to go about business is what we're after.
Well, what I did was I kind of went with Martin's concept of using a vanilla, like something that's already there, and building upon it. So what I did, I really like those 5 points there. And then I added some from our board policy. And mainly, upholding, because again, I just looked at values and ethical behavior. Upholding the oath of office and ethical behavior and two ethical behaviors. And then I went to objectivity, place the public's interest before any private interest or outside obligation. And then transparency, take no action or make decisions in the performance of their position for financial gain or personal benefit of theirs, family, and friends.
Into values of ethical behavior as part of your norms.
Yeah, actually,
Mhm.
two, objectivity, transparency, and upholding the oath of office. I would incorporate them into those five.
Yeah. Gotcha. So in today's just discussion, we're talking about what you'd like it to look like as a team, and then we'll get them typed up and Cor can bring them back to you again for editing and wordsmithing and making sure we got it right. And then you can adopt them. So. It's the exploratory stage. You're not committing to anything yet.
I was debating whether I was going to say this, but Martin brought up a good point that caused me to think a little bit. Is a lot of our ethical policy specifically was designed, I think, to reflect what is in state law. And it's interesting to look at this and realize that our most important decision, which is making decisions for the best interest of students, is not as clearly codified in a state law to where it's it's completely understood by all of us and it's absolutely what we do. But it is so interesting that when we're writing an ethical policy, it's to mirror a state law. And then the biggest thing we do is not necessarily as explicitly put out in the state law. So it was just a interesting thought as to why it wasn't included when he mentioned that.
Anybody else have anything else that you'd like to bring up for values and ethical behavior as your?
I think when I just review it, it's like what I, like the conversation I think we had with Tucker a couple weeks ago is just like, who are we advocating for? Yes, we are advocating for the students here in this community, but also like what Tucker had mentioned. I'm not going to repeat everything everyone said because everyone brought up a very valid point, but but like just not just students though, it's our staff members or administration and everybody involved as well to making sure that our students are thriving in the school district, just in the district. And so when I'm reviewing it, yes, we are talking about putting our students' needs first, but then it's not all the students that come through the door. I think it's like the customer service, like who are we aiming to serve? We're serving the community as a whole, not just putting that out as just a reminder though, but I don't know how to accurately reflect here without having it being redundant or just being repetitive about that also.
No, and I think that's a good point. And I kind of interpret it as already being there and that be an advocate and champion for the district and public education. I think that incorporates, yes, student needs are one thing, but we do look globally on our system at the district and what is in the best interest of every constituent in the district. So.
I had just some thoughts around this too. And I wrote on the paper once Kim got that for us. Thanks, Kim. And I just was like, what about potentially adopting, these, they're the state standards. They seem very, very powerful and plausible, and then we can add to them. But I also thought, and that's what you said, Maria, so I appreciate that. Also thought having maybe our promise statements in here as well, because as I look at this, understanding where they came from, but also looking at that equity piece, is it's, you're not seeing it necessarily in here, but if we were able to add the promise statement, it would be, and looking at things from an equity lens as well, is always a best practice.
Great, I love that. You can understand that I didn't want to come in here and tell you, sorry, come in here and tell you that your board policy or the operating norms that you had need to be completely revised or redone to match up some new standards. That, you know, having the discussion about where it is and how do we mesh this. And you may have said, you know what, we have this in our policy, we're good with leaving that, can be an answer too, but, you know, thanks for that.
I say, Corey, you're also an honorary engineer that way. But the other thought that I was thinking about in the way that you can make them more lively and personal for the district is if you take that advocate for public education, then you look at board operating 5, whatever, BO5 here, and it's the Wenatchee School District in public education. So we can, and the same way when you talk about the district's promise statement, or in a more general thing, something that comes out of the strategy. If we can incorporate that in this safe harbor, safe state one, we can cross something out we don't like. It means that we've got a very good standard, but we can also make it personal and emotionally meaningful by doing that. And I think that's a shortcut to getting to the end.
Great point. All right, anything else on this one? Slide over and look at the leadership. All right. All right, we take leadership, we look at the standard here and what's missing that we need to incorporate back into it to meet your needs. Get the personalization, Wenatchee School District and public education piece. Definitely the students' best interest, advocating for Wenatchee staff, students, and community. Got all those down, Corey? And if you tell us that you want these new norms to be your norms and to personalize them and to take those thoughts, Corey and I can wordsmith them and bring them back to you at a future date. And we can call you done for today.
Yeah, I think this one is a little more vague, I think, and could use benefit from some of the minute elaboration that we have in our existing policies, I think. But conceptually, it's kind of what we have, and I don't disagree with any of it. But it is, you know, how do we, which was one I was looking at, articulating and modeling appropriate school director roles and responsibilities without sort of having a clear example of what those are, which we've done through the, you know, through the norms that the existing norms that are a little bit minutia, and but that's the kind of, so I agree with everything that's on here, but it just seems like leaves a little more vagueness than some of the others, if that makes any sense.
I get the same feeling you do, that they're general, but then what's going through my brain, I just realized now that the meeting norms we have are narrow and specific, they're behavioral, and I don't think they're incorporated in here because this is at a higher level. But sometimes when you try and be too specific with, for example, and in our own policy development, thank goodness I'm not on the policy committee anymore, but we spent some time getting rid of examples that kind of took people down on some false trails. It was either narrowing the scope or get into an area that was fuzzy, and we ended up backing off to more of the general principle and allowing interpretation to handle it. So I'm not, there's a dilemma both ways, but anyway, and I'm not sure whether making this specific would not get us into the same trap we kind of backed out of in some of our policy development recently.
Yeah, and I completely understand and agree with that as well. So in my own head, I'm struggling with what is the balance of this, because yeah, I guess my concern is I don't want to take away maybe everything we have and just adopt something so generic. Even though some of the norms and things we go by are just so obvious and we just do them every day, you know, maybe not every new board member is going to come in with that level of understanding and experience. So it's, what is that fine line? Because this to me felt a little bit more generic than what we looked at on the previous slide for the other concept. And so is there a way we can make it if we were to kind of scratch what we have and move more towards adopting this, can we make sure that there's still some either meaningful examples or standards in here so it isn't too general? But yeah, I agree that general is
In your
often better.
in your 1000 board series, it seems like you have a roles and responsibilities policy, don't you? Does that sound familiar? It seems, okay, okay.
It's more about authority than behavior.
The president's role, the vice president.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Again, this is just my take. I like these obvious tweaking. What I would add to this is so what I'm trying to do is incorporate our policy into these established ones. Give or take some, but I think this is a good point where we incorporate that transparency one. This is what I would do. Because it all has, it has to do with the whole, what leadership looks like, accountability, government, confidentiality.
Reminds me, we have some attributes somewhere that could be another resource to check that the transparency is one of the attributes we had before the strategic plan got developed. I don't have my binder with me. Okay, call them values. Yeah, maybe I used the wrong word. Yeah. So we do have some values that are another resource that we could pull into the and pull it in. Yeah. Because transparency which is a universal thing. Yeah.
Values are tied to your strategic plan, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Version 2 is, I think, and it may have totally replaced the original one.
And one thing maybe there's just too many points on leadership specific as I'm thinking about, I just flipped ahead real quickly as she's mentioning transparency and I'm going, well, if we've got a whole section A, B, C, D on communication, maybe that's hitting transparency or something. So maybe I'm looking at too much on one topic. And so maybe leadership is really just encapsulated in 2 or 3 bullet points because we've got more detail in other sections. So
I mean, I think that being said, like, I really do like this board meeting norms talking about and people being encouraged to speak. And I think that comes through in several places that the president's responsible for checking with people. Each person is encouraged to talk about what they're thinking to create transparency. I think that can go into communication and then also into leadership. But like, I don't want to lose a lot of these norms, like understanding where you're coming from with don't get too specific. But I think there's clearly some of the spirit of some of these things was meant to make sure that everyone feels included in the process and everyone is kind of able to represent their opinion because their opinion matters. And we are 5 people talking about trying to represent an entire community and students. And we're obviously all going to have a little bit different take on, even if we're all in agreement on what that looks like. And I think people are going to be in the community or be more appreciative of us talking through that than just saying we all agree.
There's another way of looking at it that we may have 2 levels. These are standards, and that would be the higher level. And they're like policies. And in certain cases, you may want procedures below the policy, just like you have regs below laws. And the procedures part would be like, for example, if we go to board operating principles, the 8th one is the only one that looks like a board meeting norm, which says, get your questions into Kim on time. Those are, call them procedures. And that aspect is missing from this package. But that would be a lesser document that we would agree to really make meetings work and operations work well. And that, to me, would be a good formula for putting things together.
yeah, not to be redundant or anything, but I think you've made a good point. It's almost like we adopted procedures first without establishing the policy or the overall framework of, why we're doing these things. So I think we definitely need more, now that we are more functional, we need more focus on the kind of the why, the bigger pictures of things, and establish those high level policies to where I think there is still a lot of this, and maybe that's why I was struggling, is I don't want to lose some of these little procedural details because I think they're helpful, but not being too specific. But they add some meaning to what we're adopting on higher levels.
So this would be changing our per like board operating principle 2. These are more of our policies and the meeting norms are more of our procedures. Is that what we're saying? That procedures being informational items only and policies being kind of governing the meeting?
To me, that seems a good structure, whether you use those words, but I don't know what the other board members think.
I think norms are typically how you're going to do business. And then the principles are usually how you're going to treat each other and what's going to be the culture of how you do business together. Exactly how I think you have them broken up here too, right? So kind of the rules of the game for running a meeting. And then how you treat each other. Yep.
Step back, it really is kind of like looking at, and this took me a while as a board member to understand too. I was like, why are we approving? Sorry, but as a new board member, I was like, why are we approving policies, but not, and we were getting information with these detailed procedures under them. And they're like, well, these are just for your information. We don't approve the procedures. And that didn't resonate with me for a long time. But if I look at it, say our dress code policy, we as a board adopt like the dress code policy. And that's kind of what I'm looking at now, some of these bigger pictures things. It's like, when it comes to our operating things, even though we have policies, I don't think we've adopted that fundamental, we're doing things in the best interest of the students. We value ethical respect and of each member. The higher level things, we kind of went straight to procedures, which is that separate thing that as the board, when we adopt the dress code policy, it's very vague and then we leave it to the individual schools or the admin to do the procedures. And so I feel like we've got procedures, but we don't have the policy. And that was I struggled with that for a long time as like a new board member. It's like, what was the difference between the policy and the procedure? For as much government work as I do too, it was strange, but I did. Because when I write them for a city, it's all of it together. But it was like, okay, what is the big picture goal? And then procedurally, how are we implementing that big picture goal?
When I think of your operating principles on the second page too, I think of that statement being the upfront, and then it's then how are we going to treat each other, or what does this mean for us to do that? All right, we're taking your thoughts and feedback. I did bring charts if we want to start to map some things out, but I think just the conversation's been really healthy and good for us to process. On the communication standard here or norm, is there anything in there that strikes you that needs to be taken out? Be nice.
You have one question for communication. If we go back to the board meeting norms from 5 years ago, there are 3 diamond golden critical words in that: presume, positive, intent. And maybe that one is the exception that's worth getting into communication. or that concept in there. That was the single most important thing to fix.
I couldn't agree more. How you approach things and how you listen matter, and that presuming positive intent can be critical. We can add that in there. Any others on communication? Right. Be nice. I know. How about on professional development? This one's not one that you have addressed, don't have addressed in your previous operating principles. Any concerns with the commitment here?
I think makes me think of West Side and writing personal contracts, and it's difficult to do and a very effective way of lifting yourself up by the bootstraps. So it's there, maybe I didn't think of that until I said the word contract. Board members, obligate themselves to. I mean, I know we're saying that, but maybe we kind of put a little stamp on it.
So it's funny you should say that, because after you get the word, we do the wordsmithing, we get documents printed for you to say, okay, here's what we think we heard you say. I would suggest it is something you both adopt and then everybody sign, that this is something we're committed to, how we work together as a team. Also the reason why we're doing it now, and we're not just saying, let's just take what worked 5 years ago. Because it's a very different board. You're working together, you all show up differently than what happened 5 years ago. So I would definitely suggest you have a signature page that also includes the cabinet, because I think that they're part of your bigger team that come regularly and meet with your board, and are those folks out in the districts that need to be committed to this too.
I love the idea. We see this in our schools and also in sports with our kids and parents. We all have to sign the contract.
Yes.
Especially.
My favorite is the sign on the baseball diamonds that are like, the referee's a volunteer, the coach is a volunteer. No scholarships will be handed out today. I do have a substantive thing that going back to the communication slide, and again, because I'm not entirely sure how we're planning to incorporate new and old, what I noticed from the communication piece, and I tried to flip ahead just to see if it was already covered, is it doesn't speak to the board discussion pieces during the meeting. And it's funny because one of the things that it says up there is for transparent communications, but then really none of the bullet points jump out at me as how we're being transparent in our meetings necessarily. So depending on how we're meshing them together, I think that would be an important area to incorporate some of the encourage to share our opinions on board discussion topics.
It's
A great place to add that. Mhm.
it's a little bit in the first bullet under leadership. We could move it or add it.
I think we could elaborate on leadership point A and elaborate on it for communication, for that transparency on communication.
Right, and that's where I got stuck on the leadership side, being why are there 5 points here? Maybe leadership is really just 2, and that's handled in my mind more in communication versus another subject. So
I am now on accountability.
I mean, again, it looks like a lot of these are reflected in those meeting norms. I just did so there's 13 in the board meeting norms, 7 of them seem to be about how you treat each other. And that seems like this would be a good place to take some of that specific accountability and treatment language and putting it in there.
Perhaps adding the integrity, the principle from the policy.
I like seeing that policy with a line through into some of these norms that you're coming up with. That's connects the dots. Anything else on accountability? All right, we'll take a look at the next one then. A commitment to educational equity. And this is actually the last standard, and let me focus us truly on your promise here. Yeah.
There is one word in there that is jumping out at me as maybe there's a different word we should be using.
Okay.
It says individual school directors prioritize the success of each and every student in their district. And I don't know why, and I feel like that was one of those words that we went over and over when we were doing the strategic plan of, does success imply ableism or something of that nature versus should we prioritize the growth of each and every student, or a different synonym there to kind of same concept. I mean, we absolutely are, we want our students to be successful and succeed. That's why we said we want them to be future ready. But I think we steered specifically away from success because, you know, what success to one is going to be different. And so I think that's where we ended up with future ready anyway, because we didn't necessarily like the word success. It just jumped out at me. So I don't know.
We can definitely change that and take language out of your strategic plan and plug it in there, so that it's again a line through. Mhm. Any others there?
I don't have anything else. I just want to say I see the word dignity in a couple of these, and I think that's something that is really important as we serve our community.
Right. If there are no others, that's a wrap. Let me just double make sure we didn't have anything else here for you. I think that was to get through this, and funny, I wrote some questions. Do we assume positive intentions? I didn't pull this slide up, but to your point there, recognize, honor diversity, portray positive others in a positive light, active participation. I did add on communication, just a wondering about media, and no surprises, I didn't see that in the original standards, and just to bring that to a question for you, if I know you have a standard for how you handled media, and if that needs to be in your norms or not. That's Mhm.
Do, and I'd like to think we adhere to it.
Yes, okay.
Sorry, Julie.
I think those were my only wonderings or questions for you, and then I found this, you know, the recipe for effective governance team. Built on trust, mutual respect, relationships, two-way frequent communication, professional learning, feedback, written evaluation. And then I found this one, which I love to bake, so I thought it was pretty cool. Start with your heaped teaspoon of purpose. Don't make the mistake of using small spoonfuls of several different objectives, as this can cause the mixture to separate. Add a large dollop of passion. The best varieties display a strong sense of energy and enthusiasm. Continue to add passion until lumps disappear. Beat in just enough freedom to generate ideas and work with initiative. Marinate with praise and supportive leadership style. Sweeten the sprinkling of fun. Apply even, gentle and continuous heat, taking care not to burn. And be sure to test your recipe and adjust the mixture to taste. So it's your leadership team. All right. Well, Corey, I don't know if you have anything else. Commitment to you is to go back and do some editing on these and bring it back to you, or Corey and Kim will as a package for you to take a look at. I'd encourage you to sign off on them together as this team's operating principles, and make sure we'll put the language in there that aligns with your ethics policy, but also your strategic plan line through there. And yeah, did we miss anything?
No, I don't think we missed anything at all. I think we value added and time well spent together as a team, working through this, and I'll be excited to be a thought partner with you as we work together and establish these standards for the board. It'd be great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say this, but I got my closing comment would be the role of the board is not to. It's interesting to notice how all of those were hit very hard in Steve Lauder's presentation.
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
There we go.
There.
A little bit.